We are going to start recording now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dean Chan, and I'm an ESL student at CCSF. On behalf of the Office of Student Activities and the Downtown Center's Associated Student Council, I'm very excited to welcome you to our ninth Leadership Fireside Chat this year. For those who are not familiar with this new leadership development program, the purpose of this leadership track is to equip CCSF students and student leaders with a wealth of leadership insight, tips, and strategies. We hope you will have a better understanding of leadership in action from a diverse group of effective and seasoned leaders across various industries. Before I introduce today's speaker, Charmaine Chan, I'd like to share a few details about the program. First, for those who attend 7 out of the 10 fireside chats are eligible to receive a certificate of participation at the recognition event on May 13th. Every session is open to all students, even if you decide not to participate in the certificate part of the program. Second, the next and last fireside chat is scheduled on May 6th. Since you have registered for today's session, thanks to June, we have a record of your attendance. Nothing further is needed on your end to mark your participation. Next, please know that these sessions will be recorded. The links will be posted on CCSF Students Activity Office website for you to review later or to share with others so that they may benefit from this learning opportunity as well. If you have questions about this Leadership Fireside Chat program and the certificate of participation, please email ccsfe@mail.ccsf.edu. I would also like to share a little bit regarding today's format. After these opening remarks, Dr. Geisce Ly, Dean of Downtown Center and School of Business, Trial Development, Culinary, Fashion, and Horticulture will interview today's speaker for about 15 minutes. If you have questions for Charmaine Chan, please enter them in the chat. At around 5 p.m., there will be a question and answer opportunity for Charmaine to respond to your questions. During the last 10 minutes of our time together, we will invite you to share what you have learned today that will help you in your leadership development journey. Okay, now Deborah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Candace. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Deborah Hadaik, and I am ESL student at CCSF. And I'm so delighted to introduce today's speaker, Charmaine Chan. So Charmaine Chan is a cybersecurity expert at Google, based out of San Francisco. Previously, Charmaine worked for and was a leader in the US government for 13 years in Washington, D.C., focusing on cybersecurity and risk management within the federal law enforcement space. As both an advocate and community leader, she works tirelessly to create leadership and educational opportunities within the workspace and community at large. Charmaine is the founder and president of the nationwide University of Michigan, Asian American and Pacific Islander Alumni Affiliation Club that brings together, empowers the voice of, and ensures representation of the AAPI community. For her tireless leadership effort in this role, she earned the prestigious 2021 Volunteer of the Year Award from the University of Michigan Alumni Association. She has a BS in cellular molecular biology and minor and minor in Spanish from University of Michigan. And now I would like to turn this over to Dean Geisce Ly, who will be chatting with Charmaine about her leadership journey and experience. Jessie, the floor now is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Great job, Candace. Thank you for the opening remarks and the bio. Again, I am just delighted for the folks on the call for your first, if this is your first time, we're gonna learn a lot from Charmaine. Charmaine is just an awesome person. I've gotten to know her over the years, and she is just a true inspiration. And I'm just so delighted, again, that you're joining us today. Just a quick, housekeeping. Again, I'm gonna interview Charmaine for about 50 minutes. So at about 5 o'clock, Seaway will be asking questions to Charmaine. So if you have questions you want to ask Charmaine, please, again, direct message Seaway, and she'll be asking questions for you. And certainly at the end of our program today, we'll be asking you to share some takeaways. Again, this is a leadership development program. We want folks to learn from different industry leaders about their life experiences, about their career experiences. And today, again, you're going to learn more about what it's like to work in big tech. So Google obviously is big tech. Charmaine, again, has years of experience prior to Google. But again, at the same time, we also want to learn more about her years working in the U.S. government, what it's like to work in big tech, and of course, her being volunteer of the year is a big deal as well. So we certainly want to get as much insight from Charmaine as much as possible. So without further ado, I will start the first question. Charmaine, I know you have been looking forward to this, so thank you, Charmaine, for joining us. Again, we're just absolutely delighted.
Thank you. I guess I'm calling you Dean Geisce Ly because I'm usually just calling you Jessie. And I also want to thank Candace for explaining the program so well, and also Deborah for reading my bio so wonderfully. Thank you very much.
So Charmaine, you are a remarkable, amazing person. I know that you are. So let's get to know more about how you got to where you are today. So tell us about your career path.
Well, quite interesting. I started my whole life thinking I really want to be a doctor. That's why I did cellular molecular biology. And I think part of it was the stigma of Asians having to be a certain type of, or having to be a certain career, right? Go towards a certain career. But I really wanted to, because I really wanted to help people. And then, so all through college, I actually volunteered at the Children's Hospital at University of Michigan, Mott's Children's Hospital. And in my senior year, they asked me last minute to volunteer in a ward where the children were really sick from various diseases and from various illnesses. And I realized then and there I could not be a doctor. I couldn't handle it emotionally. And so for me, it's like, oh my God, what's next? I've spent 4 years of college pushing myself in this medical degree, right? Or trying to get into med school. And it's already now the second semester of the year, and most people already have their job or have already gotten into grad school. And so I've missed all the recruitment opportunities. So, I mean, I was definitely very scared and very frightened, because for me at the time, I didn't have the hindsight that it was maybe okay to take a couple months off of out of college and go before finding a job and things like that. So I scrambled, and I actually at first, when I ended up working at a law firm when I first came out as an assistant paralegal, thought maybe being a lawyer is something I'd want to do. And actually that was something my dad was pushing on me. He's like, you like to argue, you like to talk. So maybe this is great for you. I did not like it. So I ended up through networking getting a job in Washington, D.C., where I worked for an Asian American who was the chief financial officer of Department of Labor. And so I sort of got my bearings there. And then from there, just opportunity and luck, I started working for a defense contract company called BAE Systems, and started doing more of the IT program management. Originally, I was doing more business development type things, but I just fell into it. They said, okay, you need to be here. And at 24, you just do wherever the job takes you sometimes. And so did that and then got hired by the government based on my previous work, where I basically worked for 10 years as a federal employee. And now I'm here at Google, got recruited, and I moved out here from Washington, D.C. after being there for 13 years. So it's quite the journey. It definitely isn't one straight line and linear. And I think that's the most important thing because of my journey, it has really taught me to be quite resilient, but also to be flexible. And I think that's really important in any leader, and not just a leader in life. So not sure if that answered the question of the journey here.
No, I mean, absolutely, right? There is no one straight path. It's very different for everybody. And certainly, BAE Systems is a big one, is a big, company, the government, and now Google, right? So what was it like to switch industries, especially from public to private?
The defense industry and the government are quite formal, very formal, very hierarchical, meaning, whatever the boss says goes. And you cater to your boss, not your peers, or the people that you may be managing underneath you. And that in itself can be frustrating because it feels like you don't have a voice sometimes. And I will say the difference in working now at a big tech company, and I can't say that this is for all companies, but specifically Google, right? Everyone has a say. And even though you might have different levels of where you're at and different responsibilities because of your level, it doesn't matter. When you come to the table, everyone has a right to say something and has a conversation. I think one thing that was really great was that, and I'm sure some of the women on this, listening to this chat can relate, as women, and maybe as the younger women, we're often looked at as the person that should maybe take the notes because we are young and we are the women. And I never followed by that in my when I was in the government. I actually always made the men who worked for me to take the notes. I made it a point to do that. But here, there's no expectation. Even if you're the program manager, the expectation is that someone's going to take the notes, and it does not have to be you or the woman, anything like that. And I think that's really important, that there is that sort of that Google tries to break down a lot of the stereotypes. And although they're still trying, we're not 100% perfect. I think that is really important, and that's where I see the difference, right? And it is very different for me to be able to wear jeans every day. It's very different for me to see people in sweatpants at work, where I used to wear a suit every day. So there is some differences. It's definitely less formal and less buttoned up. And also there's more money to spend. And what I mean by that is when you work for the government, you have to really be careful with everything that you do, because your employer is not the US government, it's the citizens who are paying taxes. So, I know there's a lot of jokes about government people not necessarily always overspending and things like that, but really you really think about that, and you have to be very cognizant of that. Here or in Google, it's not that you're not thinking of the money, there's just way more of it, right? And you can earn it back. You're not earning it from taxpayers' money, you're earning it from selling products and ads and things like that. So there is that big difference.
Absolutely. And again, I'm just, again, you're a perfect person to share your leadership wisdom and insight, because again, it's very, very different experiences. And again, certainly, for folks on the call, right, your title, program manager, what is that? So can you say more about your roles and responsibilities? Yeah.
So as a program manager, basically, you're trying to get something accomplished, and you're trying to get multiple different parties to agree. I would say that 90% of my days are in meetings, which isn't always great, because that means you're working a lot of times trying to just catch up and do the work outside of office hours. But it's a lot of negotiating. You're trying to get one group to do something you need done while getting the other group to do something that the other group wants to do, but then they maybe not really like each other and want to do what each other has to do. And so it's a lot of negotiating. It's a lot of hand-holding and explaining, but it's also a lot of organization. It's a lot of strategy work. You have to think very far ahead of, if this works, what does that mean? If this doesn't work, what do we do? What are the resources we have to use? How much money is it going to cost? So you're really thinking about the whole big picture of it and strategizing for it, while also being the executor and getting all your teams to execute. Meanwhile, most people who are doing all the work for you do not work for you. So that's another thing. That's why I say negotiate, because you really have to be you have to be able to build relationships if you want to succeed well in this role. That's just my personal opinion. I think I've done well in this role. Mind you, you can still be a manager, but half the time, the people that you're managing isn't doing stuff for your program or project. They're out there doing programs and projects because they're also program managers for other people. So.
Well, it's fascinating. And again, I think you use two skills that I'd like to, if you don't mind, expand on. So you said
Sure.
Negotiating and strategizing. So say more to some of the students here. I mean, we hear the word negotiate,
Yeah.
and strategize, but what does it really mean, sort of, as in a management role? What does it mean?
Sure. Well, so negotiating, I think the most successful programs and projects and the happier teams are never people that say, you must do this, right? It's trying to get people to come to the conclusion that what they're doing is good for everybody overall. But what's important is that there's a lot of groups that a lot of teams that might be, that might say, I can't do this right now. I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, and I don't want to do this. And then there's another group that might say, well, they have to do this because we say so, especially in security. So part of the negotiating is really just saying, okay, understanding why that team can't do it, what the resources challenges are, and what all the challenges are, right? The why not? Understanding that, and then and figuring out then what that solution is. So that sort of brings in the strategizing part, right? Of thinking of, okay, well, I'm going to try to fix all these issues by doing X, Y, Z. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving you specifics because I can't really talk about specifics. But if that's the case, then I could say, okay, let's do this. I know you don't have the resources now, but if I were to give you 2 people from this other team that this team that wants you to do is going to pay for, but I know that's still not enough people, but can you then get it done 6 months after the fact that we want you to get it done? And if they say yes, I can go back now to the people who want it done and say, listen, they're not going to get it done. I know you're already paying for 2 people and you've agreed to that. Well, what really is the risk of them not getting it done 6 months ahead of schedule? What's the difference 6 months from then and now? And that's what I mean by negotiating. And a lot of that is also strategizing, because you have to kind of think who needs what and why do they need it? And you have to get to the heart of why they need it, right? Because a lot of times people just say, this has to be due on this date, but why?
Right.
What's the reason? And they really can't tell you why. And if that's the case, then you have room to negotiate and sort of think big picture. Okay, let's take a step back and really look at what the problem is and what are the actual things we need to fix and do. And then let's look at it from overall and start planning. And that's what I also mean by strategizing as well. You're planning. You're not just planning the work right in front of you, right? Like some of you guys have talked about to me earlier about what you think you want to do for your career, right? Or what you think you want to do after CCSF, right? You're not just going to just do it. You have to think about long-term how you're going to get there. And that's what I mean by strategizing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's great to hear you frame it that way, right? Because part of, negotiating, strategizing is critical thinking, and just, assessing the situation and sort of tailoring it right to your audience. I think you were spot on for that.
Yeah.
So in general, I know the term cybersecurity is a vague term.
Mhm.
In general, what issues and problems should we know about just in general terms about cybersecurity?
Well, cybersecurity often, like, when people think cybersecurity, they think about the defense of it, of like, oh, if someone hacks you, or not even things of the defense, but like the attack and the defense of it, right? And what the goal that I'm trying to do at Google is actually the opposite. I'm trying to be offensive. I am trying to teach people and trying to get ahead of the situation before we get attacked and before breaches and things happen. I think that that's like the most important thing. I mean, the easiest things to kind of think about are, phishing, right? Like you get those scam calls or those links on those emails, right? Yeah, prevention, great, exactly. And so you think about those emails that you get, and you're like, you think it's okay to click, and you do it, and then the next thing you know, you've installed malware on your phone or even ransomware, right? So those things still exist, and that has been happening, what, 10 years, 15 years, and it's still happening now, and it's never really going to go away because of human behavior, right? As long as if we're always on the defensive and never on the offensive, the behavior is never going to change, and you're always going to be falling victim to that, right?
Absolutely. So in terms of what you anticipate happening in the next 5 years with regard to potential cybersecurity threats, and anything you think we should know about?
I don't think anything that is new. The first one is really you're your own biggest threat, right? I mean, because if you're not aware of things things of just not clicking on things or not answering things, or not questioning, should I really be putting this pin? And I know I annoy a lot of people who call me when they call me and say, and they actually are, they're like, even at work, if they call me, like, we need this pin ID. And I ask why. Why would you need this as a verification? I know it annoys everybody else, but it's the same thing if people are like, well, we want to deliver it this day. You don't want to say, I'm not going to be home, I'm going to be on vacation, right? But a lot of people just feel because they've connected with the person, even for a short amount of time, they can trust, right? And I'm not saying don't trust people, but I'm saying that ourselves can be our biggest threat, because we forget about these things because we're human, right? But just being on high alert is really important. Those phishing and spear phishing scams. So spear phishing is more targeted. Phishing is like they'll blast it out to everybody. Spear phishing is targeted to like individuals or organizations. They're never going to go away until everybody sort of learns just not to click it. But there's still a lot of people that do. I mean, I know some of my relatives, sometimes they forward things. I'm like, why are you forwarding this? This is a scam, and they think, oh, because my friend sent it to me and it was fine. Also, distributed denial of service. That's going to be huge. I mean, especially as we get more prone to using technology for everything. So think about how those Zoom attacks that came on, right? Where people were coming in and bombing the Zooms and being really disruptive, right? I mean, that's a form of cyber. That's a form of cyber attack. And then of course there's 0 day. 0 day, something that you may not have to worry about as much, but you should care about, because 0 day basically means when a developer doesn't know about a vulnerability in their code or in their network or something, and the hacker finds it out and is able to attack because of that weakness, right? So that's why we call it cyber hygiene, meaning like this is why like keeping good cyber hygiene is really important, so that you can make sure that you don't have bad code out there, or like leave back doors open for an attacker to come in, or like you secure your network and things like that. And that's really important too in your home. It's the same thing, like your Wi-Fi should be protected. You should probably change your Wi-Fi passwords once in a while. Have a different Wi-Fi line for your guests, so that your guests are using a different, I mean, you pay for it the same, but you can ask Comcast to change it so that you have one for your guests, one for you, things like that. So, and simple things like that. If you're at a cafe and you're at Starbucks and you're typing some stuff, make sure you don't have like your bank account up where someone can just walk by you, right?
Right.
Things like that. Even on your phone, if you're typing in a password, and you're doing it up here, everyone can see it. So I know that sounds like really simple things, but we really are our own worst threats. And especially just, we're so dependent on technology,
Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing those reminders because you are a cybersecurity expert. So again, thank you for the free advice. So now for the folks on the call, Charmaine is a real deal. She is, absolutely authentic. She is going to tell us, straight. So I'm just curious, what's it like to work in big tech, Charmaine? I know you referenced it earlier, but what's it like, especially as an Asian American woman?
Yeah, I think there's definitely ups and downs, right? As the ups are that it's more open and they know that there's issues in terms of diversity. They know that there's a lot of, that microaggressions happen. They know there's biases. They know all that and they're trying to fix it. But I do think that there is still, and I'm going to speak from as an Asian woman perspective, right? So, as Asians and Asian Americans, and I want to be broad about this group, right? And I can definitely talk about why later I say that. I want to be inclusive, is that we are looked at as very monolithic, right? But we aren't. And there is this idea that we are monolithic and that we are all at the same economic level, education level, and we have all the same equal opportunities. And that's a big stereotype, and it's not true. And some of these big tech companies, they tend to put us all together as one too. So a lot of times we're looked, and it's not just tech companies, it's kind of everywhere. We're overlooked because as a group, we're all grouped together. So we're looked at, so we're like, oh, they're fine because we've grouped them together. They're a big enough group. They're getting all these things. They're fine. But in reality, that's not the case. I don't see a lot of Asian women leaders. I don't even see a lot of men Asian leaders at the big tech. I mean, even in roles in Asia, I don't see them. They're filled with expats, right? And that's interesting to me. Not interesting in the sense that I think that the company tries to, and again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Google or anything like that, but from my perspective, they try to eliminate biases, but sometimes like the biases cannot be eliminated because that you're not getting at the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is not something that one company can solve. It's something like humanity needs to solve, and it's hard, and I mean, I think we've all seen it right now. There's just so much violence going on, right? Shootings, beatings, and everyone's really a target. And so I think that is hard because you feel like your company is trying to do its best, but you also know that they're not doing enough for your specific community. And sometimes it's hard because do you want to be that person that says, hey, what about us, right? It's hard to speak up about yourself, right? And I will tell also, I was very excited to go to Google because I thought, wow, there's going to be more women, right? Because I was where I am in the government, very male dominated, a lot of ex-military, law enforcement, just men. And I thought, great, I'm going to be going to a place where there's going to be more women. I rarely have worked with any women. Like I have 2 women on my team currently. I'm actually just accepted a new offer within Google. So I'm moving to a new team. I'm the only woman on that team of 12 men. I mean, it is crazy to me that this is still happening. So I think those are the things that I'm more aware of. Obviously, working for big tech, you make more money. There's more benefit. I wouldn't say more benefits. The benefits are cheaper, better, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of great things. We have different speakers practically every day, and you can join whenever you want, live stream, YouTube. They make it so everything's accessible for you, but that's sort of just like that's just like a perk for me. That's not important. You know, it's a nice to have, but I didn't need it in the past, and I don't know if I need it now. It's just a nice to have. So what's important for me though is that knowing that if I am the only woman in this group, how, you know, the question I asked was, what's the atmosphere like? Right? I need to protect myself. Right? And so it's really important for everyone to understand that, like, sometimes big tech, they say one thing, but it's not always practiced. And I think as long as everyone understands that, and I wish I knew that, you know, I was a little naive going into thinking that it'd be more equal, but it's not. But at least they're trying. Right?
Well, I have no doubt you are a strong advocate for you know, women voices in the room. So you know, again, I really appreciate all that you're doing. Now, I'm sure some of the folks on the call want to know how should they prepare for interviews if they're interested in working for a big tech company, right? I mean, what's it like to go through the process? Not necessarily at Google, but in general, any pointers for folks that might be interested in going to big tech?
Yeah, so I think it's really important in general, and this is not just for big tech. I think this is in general for any job, whether tech or you're studying for trying to get into a grad program, because everyone wants to know, what is it the result, what is the problem, and how did you solve it? It's the critical thinking aspect that you were talking about, right, Jesse, earlier? So actually one thing that I live by is the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, and result, right? And I actually apply this to my resume, and I also apply this to the interview process, right? So I would say to prepare, when you do your resume, make sure you have a objective of what you want to do up top. That's really important, right? And then list all your different things that you want done, but make sure that you're not just doing a laundry list of these are the things I've done. It's really important in your resume that you, in the most concise way you can, state the problem and then state how you fixed it and why it's important that you fixed it, right? So for example, you know, we were losing $50 million a year and we had no idea why. And I went in and did an analysis of these 6 programs and realized our vendors were overcharging us. So therefore, I was able to save us back to $50 million a year, right? That's just something I'm making up. I never did that. But you know, that's the point, is that you want to have that on your resume as most concise as you can. Then when you're interviewing, when they ask you about a situation, you can go back and use the same method, go back to that resume point, but now you're just going to expand on it more, because you're going to talk about adding, like, you know, I didn't just do that. I led a team of accountants who looked at the forensics of it, or I briefed senior leadership on it, because then it shows that you did that you have speaking skills, right? And that you're able to communicate with senior people, things like that. So then in your interview, you're able to elaborate on that resume point, but still using that STAR method of situation, task, action, and results. So that's actually really the most important thing. And the second most important thing is to be yourself. Like, don't be someone you're not, you know, because if you get hired for someone like being different and then you're not really that, you're going to be miserable and it's just not going to work out. So like, be yourself. It's really important that you are yourself, right? And don't feel like, so if you're not a smiler, don't feel like you have to smile. Maybe occasional grin just to let them know you're doing okay, but you don't have to smile through the whole thing. I am a smiler, as you can see. My cheeks hurt a lot of the time. And so, I mean, right now my cheeks are hurting because I'm smiling so much, but you know, it's okay to be who you are. I'm a bubbly person and I let it shine. And some people don't like that, but that's okay. That means maybe that group isn't right for me because they don't like that, right? So I think that's really important, to be yourself. 3, try to get your nerves out as much as possible, right? And it's okay to say, I'm nervous during the interview, because at least then it lets your person know who's interviewing you, okay, they're nervous. Maybe they're not having such a great start, and that's why maybe they're stuttering, or maybe they're having a hard time answering the question because they're so nervous. And maybe they can help by saying, okay, let's take a deep breath. I'm not going to judge you on this. Let's, you know, or you could say, I'm really nervous. I just need to take a deep breath. But it's okay to be that honest. But try to get your nerves out as much as possible. If you need exercise, do it. I always actually, before every interview that I do, I actually work out. I have to, because it gets all my nervous energy out. Right. So I remember my interview was 8 a.m. I woke up at 5 a.m. just to like work out. You don't have to do that, but I'm a little crazy when it comes to try to get it out, because I also get nervous, which might not seem like it. I might seem like a very confident person, but I get nervous. I doubt myself sometimes, right? But I put on an air of I'm fine, right? Some of it's a little bit like you just have to really believe in yourself. So I think those are the most important things is, you know, be yourself, try to get as much of your nerves out as you can, doing whatever you need to do. Be proud of the fact that you got to this point, right? Not everyone gets that phone interview. Not everyone gets that in-person interview, right? And I think that's something that you have to remember, like, wow, I got myself this far. Be proud of that.
Well, Charmaine, you have a lot of accomplishments in your lifetime, and again, I know you'll do so many more things. It's just remarkable. So I need to tell the folks on the call. I first met Charmaine because she was organizing an event, and when I heard Charmaine, you know, speaking to this group, I was like, I need to reach out to Charmaine. So that's how I reached out to Charmaine, because of our University of Michigan connection. I went to University of Michigan for my doctorate. Charmaine got her bachelor's there. So we're going to shift focus to talk about, you know, University of Michigan, specifically what you did to deserve Volunteer of the Year. So the University of Michigan, for the folks on the call, bestowed the Volunteer of the Year last year to Charmaine. So University of Michigan is like a Berkeley. You know, they only pick one Volunteer of the Year. So Charmaine, what inspired you to start the nationwide University of Michigan Asian American and Pacific Islander Alumni Affiliation Club? And I just love to hear the stories behind your idea to sort of give voices to Asian and Asian Americans.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm kind of going to go back a little bit. So growing up, you know, I never really thought about my Chinese American duality at all. You know, I felt very much, I'm Chinese, I'm also American. It was never a question for me, right? And that was because I grew up in LA, right? I mean, I was in Hong Kong for a couple of years, which is pretty international. We also learned to speak English at the same time, like as we speak Chinese, because it was a British colony at one point, right? And so come back to LA and I was surrounded by Asians and Asian Americans, and in fact, surrounded by a lot of different, you know, different races. And so that for me, I didn't realize how lucky I was that I didn't have to think about it. That doesn't mean that I didn't experience racism or microaggression or stereotype words being said to me or things at all. That does not mean that didn't happen in school or anything like that, right? In fact, I mean, ESL, right? I told you guys that I was in ESL class for a couple of years. And it had nothing to do with the fact that it had everything to do with the fact that I didn't speak the English the way that they wanted me to speak it because of the way I learned the British way, you know, which made my parents upset because they didn't even tell my parents that they had put me in ESL, right? Because my English was fine. I just had an accent that has, you know, nothing to do with whether or not my English skills are good or not, right? And so, but going to Michigan, I was for the first time not a majority or like part of like the higher percentage of people. I think at the time when I went, Michigan was the highest minority, but we were only 13%. 13% out of 40,000 plus undergrad, I think, or 45,000 undergrad. Yeah, that's how big our school was. And that's not a lot, right? And so it didn't occur to me until then about the community, because I was always part of the community. And it didn't occur to me until meeting a lot of Asian Americans who grew up with them being the only Asian American in their town. And them meeting and wanting to find that connection with other people that I don't want to say look like them, because that's another stereotype, but maybe I would go through the same things as they did, right? Because they didn't look like what a American should look like, right? By definition of by other people. So, and then, so that kind of started my, yes, shared life experiences. Thank you, Heather. You're really offering really great words and phrases today. I appreciate that. Thank you. And so, so kind of moving forward after college, I went to DC and it was sort of the same. And I joined my University of Michigan alumni like there, and I was the president for the DC club, regional club, and things like that. Got really involved because I really loved my school. My school really helped me make the friends that I'm still friends with people from high school, but it was life-changing for me. But what really sparked it was really the last couple of years when that Trump administration and all that Asian hate. I think that's what pushed me over the edge. I always knew to speak up about it, and I always knew that we had to do something, and I always had a voice, but I never thought, you know what, we need to create a platform. It never occurred to me, wow, there is no representation of the Asian American Pacific Islander community for Michigan. They have a Latinx, they have LGBTQ, they have Black alumni, but they have nothing for the Asian American community. They also don't have something for the Middle Eastern community, which is something I'm hoping that they'll work on. And at this point, for me, like, we need a safe space. And how come is it that Michigan thinking of everybody else but us? And that's when I realized I have to do something, right? And I worked for 2 years to get this off the ground. This was our inaugural year this year. I'm trying to put together a scholarship fund, which for a student to attend University of Michigan for 1 full year, but over the course of 4 years, that's a $45,000, a little bit over $45,000. And the reason why I'm so passionate about the scholarship fund is because there is a scholarship that the Alumni Association gives, and it's for underserved people. Guess whose ethnicity is not listed as being able to get that scholarship? The API community. And that's crazy to me, because that's that stereotype that I was talking earlier about. So, and then also for me, this club was really important. I named it this way, Asian American Pacific Islander, because all of us Asians have different experiences. We have shared experiences, but also very different. We have Asian Americans who have been here for generations and generations. And so the term, like, even Asian American can be a culture. It's different, right? Versus Asians who have come here for school or have come here for work and are just starting to settle in, right? And understand maybe like what's happening in the States. And one of the biggest things that I learned through a lot of this Asian hate when it was happening through these talking groups with people in the API community is that there's a lot of people who came here first, right? And they're like, I thought America was this place of like equal opportunity. I know there was hate, but I didn't realize it was geared toward people like me. And then in the background, and for those first-generation immigrants are saying, wow, I didn't know this was happening, and now I'm experiencing it because, especially during this rise of Asian hate. But as an Asian American, I can tell you, wait a second, we've been experiencing it through the history of America. If you want to look at the laws that didn't allow us to be citizens, if you want to look at how we were treated in this while building the railroads, if you want to talk about the internment camps of the Japanese Americans, that stuff isn't always taught because Asian American history isn't taught, right? Actually, a lot of schools right now, or states are trying to pass this law that Asian American history has to be taught. But for people who are just coming here to the States recently, they don't know about this, or they didn't really know about that history, right? why would they? It's something we try to bury, but yet it's still the reason why there's that racism, because we bury it. We try to bury it. So it was really important for me to include Asian and Asian American and Pacific Islanders, because we have different stories, but there is a common goal for all of us, right? At the same time, to have a platform where we can share and be recognized. So that's the reasoning for the name. And I know I went all over the place with that.
Charmaine, you know, again, your hard work the last two and a half years. I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, you started this affiliation club. It's a nationwide club. Again, you know, congratulations on being the volunteer of the year. So now, you know, being a founder and president of this club, you got to work with folks across the U.S.
Yes.
So what's it like as a leader to work with a bunch of volunteers?
It is hard. You know, I was actually just discussing this with an AAUM staff member today to try to float some ideas, because our second year is coming up in May. And of course, you guys are all welcome to join our activities in May. They're all panelist speakers, all things like that. And I'll make sure that Jessie has all the information, and happy to share. And you know, the part of it is just, it's hard because we're all remote, right? So it was easier in DC because everyone was in DC, right? And you could gather together and it feels like a team. But as a leader right now, and even at Google, right? Right now, like, most of us have been working together as a team before the pandemic happened, right? And so we already felt cohesive. But with this, we launched this during the pandemic. So we never really all got together. And so I think that has been my biggest challenge, is that it's not because people are in different locations, it's because we've never been able to get together and feel like we've bonded. You know, I had someone say the other day, it just doesn't seem that fun. You know, it doesn't feel fun. I thought it'd be more fun being on the board. And I agree with you. And it's because it's because she thought there'd be more of the social aspect, but there really isn't, because we're not all in the same place. And I can't get everybody together because of COVID right now, right? To even have like maybe once a quarter, everyone get together and have a summit and spend a weekend together and really get to know each other that way. So that's been the most difficult part. The second difficult part is it's volunteers, right? You're a volunteer. It's different than someone who's getting paid to do something. So you have to deal with that very differently, right? If you're like, there's certain things you can do and say because you're like, well, you're getting paid, so you have to do it. But as a volunteer, like, you can't force a volunteer to do something. If a volunteer says they do something, they'll do something and they don't. You can't exactly say, well, these are the repercussions if you don't do it, right? You have to just kindly urge them and, you know, or get them to, or help them, or just realize they just ghosted you, which happens a lot. We have a lot, not the board itself, but we have a lot of volunteers that just will be really excited to help. They'll meet with you. They're excited via email. You email them 2 weeks later, be like, hey, we have this thing. What do you think? And then they don't ever talk to you again. I have one of my committee leads. She talks about, like, she's like, I feel like this is just so much so traumatizing for me, because I'm getting ghosted by volunteers and I'm getting ghosted in my dating life. It's just like, it is. And it's true. I'm like, oh my goodness. And it happens. And you have to remind everybody to not take it personally. It's just that people have things in their lives they want to help, but not everyone's the best communicator. And sometimes people, that's why they ghost, right? Because they don't want to disappoint you. They rather just ignore you, right? I mean, that's a philosophy I have about dating too, but this is not a talk about dating life. But the thing that does work is just constant communication. It is a lot of work on my end. I am constantly calling people. I'm constantly texting. I'm constantly going to all these different committee meetings. And I hope eventually that I'll be able to self-run, but I also realize that I am learning a lot, right? I am starting a grassroots organization out of nowhere with not a lot of funding. So I will tell you that a lot of these clubs, the regional clubs, they get like $14,000, $15,000 a year. You know how much I got this year? And I had to beg for it. $2,000. compared to everyone's budget of $14,000 or $15,000, right? And so, and that's another thing to have to like, to point that I pointed out, is that it makes me feel like we're not important as an identity club, that you're just checking a box because you're not giving us the funding or the resources. I even said, at this point, someone, if the school cares enough, why aren't they hiring someone for us? Why is it all just volunteers? Help us get off the ground so then it can be volunteers, right? So there's that too of struggling, because I do love my school, my school, and I love the people, but sometimes I sometimes wonder, how performative is this? How performative is your support, right? You can say a lot of things, but you're not giving me those things that I need to be support. You're giving me a staff member, but they are also staff to 10 other clubs, right? And they're doing their best. They want to help, but it's not their fault. It's thinking about like that leadership. What is it like? How can they really help us? And if they're going to listen, right? And I think that's another hard part for me, is like really advocating for us, and trying to get more resources.
Well, Charmaine, I know, we have several more minutes left, and then I'm going to turn it over to Seaway. But before I do that, Charmaine and I, we're doers. We like to get things done. And to some extent, we're type A. We exhibit type A behavior.
I'm like a B plus, A minus, actually.
So Charmaine, what tips would you give folks to the folks on the call who are the doers, the folks who want to get things done, the folks who want to sort of achieve, accomplish, and aim for excellence? What advice would you give?
Well, this is not a type A response. You got to be flexible. I mean, that is just the most important thing. I think I've been successful in my career and life in general, been happier because I'm flexible. Like, yeah, some things bother me, but at the end of the day, is that really going to affect not doing it my way? Is that really going to be a problem? Right? Or like, if something doesn't go my way, you know what? The best solution is to think about how to fix it, for even if it didn't go your way, right? And that's part of that flexibility mindset, because if you're not flexible, right, you're going to think you're going to be stuck. It has to be done that way. And then you're just going to get angry about it. Have you ever, I mean, I think at least for myself, I've been in that before. And then I have to remind myself, be flexible, right? Second thing is really like, you have to also though stand for what you believe in, right? If you think something is really wrong and like unethical or not right, at least state it out to everybody and say, listen, I'm going to be a team player, but I want everyone to know I don't believe in it, but I will, if the team wants to do it this way, it will, but I want it on record, right? But I think that's a little bit part of the flexible adaptability, but at the same time, voice what you're saying. And then I think the third is allowing yourself space, right? Like taking a beat and saying, I can't do this right now. I'm sorry, right? Or you've assigned me too many things, or or I have too much on my plate. I need to prioritize what is important and then take that step back. And that's really hard for me because like Jesse said, I'm a doer. And, at one point when we were looking at capacity planning for work for me at Google, I was working at 358%, which is crazy because you're only supposed to be working at 80% to 100%. 100% is if you don't even take breaks. So I was killing myself working 80-hour weeks because I couldn't say no, right? And I don't know what that proves. What that proves is just that people can take advantage of you and give you work to do. Yeah, they know you. Part of me is like, oh, they know I can do it. I'm good at it. And so, they trust me, great. But then the other part is, well, I'm kind of the sucker because I'm doing someone else's work, right? And I'm also not giving someone else the opportunity to shine. So I think that's really important.
Well, Charmaine, again, I continue to be inspired by you. Your life experiences. I mean, it's just remarkable how resilient you are and how you definitely demonstrated true grit. So for the folks on the call who have learned so much about you in a short period of time, I'm just curious. is there a legacy you want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered for? Because you've done so much already. And I'm just curious in terms of, your career aspirations, your life goals. What do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I feel like my life goals change on a yearly basis. And I think that's important, is you need to actually evaluate your goals every year, and realize that some of them just might not happen, and that's okay. You pivot and you think about what you really need at the time, right? I say this because back in June, I was actually hit by a drunk driver while crossing the street over on Polk and Hayes, right on the intersection. I had the right of way. I had a fractured neck. I had my leg was totally messed up, and I had a brain bleed and a really bad concussion. And I'm actually still healing from that. And physically I look okay, but I'm in speech therapy, which you might think, whoa, that's crazy. Speech therapy is more for like memory, cognitive issues. I'm in vision therapy. I'm in vestibular therapy. I'm relearning how to drive, something I've known how to do since I was 15. So it's kind of crazy, right? And I thought this time this year that I'd be at a certain place in my life because I had all these goals. And I realized I had to give myself grace by saying I'm not going to meet these goals at all, because this thing that happened to me happened and I'm dealing with it. And I mean, at my age, I didn't think I'd have to relearn how to drive or relearn how to do daily tasks, right? I actually have to relearn how to think concentration. Like, you might see me looking on the side. Normally I can just talk and not have notes. I had to write notes down because I actually can't always remember the things that I tee up in my head that to say next. Yeah, and I'm relearning how to do that. I'm supposed to be back in 100% at some point, but who knows, right? So, but that was really hard for me and for my self-esteem and my mental health, right? And it was really hard to talk about because, a lot of people think I'm this really strong person, but sometimes it like I realize like, and I'm like, I have to be strong because everyone thinks I'm strong, right? But I think this, like, my kind of everything that came out of this was like, I don't need to be like that. It's okay. It's okay that I'm not strong. And it's okay to tell people to back off and stop telling me that I'm strong, because right now I don't feel that. And maybe I will be back again feeling that later, but it's okay. And that's what I mean. Like, just in general, your goals change and you just have to be flexible with it, or else you are really just that your mental health is really just not going to go the way that you need it to go. And, I also was like, well, I want to be a mother by this time. I want to be a CEO of a mid-sized firm. And now I'm thinking, well, I don't really want to be a CEO of a mid-sized firm. I think maybe I want to do my own thing. And my own thing is something that helps people. I don't really know what that is yet, though, right? What's the hardest part for me about coming to Google was that when I was working in the government, I felt like I was actually like making a difference because there was something that I was doing specific, right? But now I feel like, well, I'm just here in this cog in this big company, and I'm not sure what my product does to help make people's lives better, right? So I think that is right now me reevaluating what my life goal is, if that makes sense, right? So I can't really tell you what that is right now because I'm in that time of figuring it out again, but that's okay. What I want to tell everyone, that's okay, right? I'm not going to beat myself up for it. Maybe, I should be at my age knowing this, but I don't. I did last year, so, well, thank you, Deborah. So.
Well, Charmaine, I could listen to you for another 5 hours. Seriously, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your insight, and just sharing your personal stories and struggles. We all have struggles. For the folks on the call, we will have bad days. We will have awful days. We have, challenges, obstacles along the way. But to Charmaine's point, be flexible, adapt, and just, reassess what makes sense for you. Because not everything's going to turn out the way, you want them to turn out. But again, Charmaine, thank you so much for sharing with us, again, what you've been through. And again, you're just an inspiration. Again, the fact that you work in the defense industry, the fact that you work for the government, the fact that you're working at a big tech and projecting your voice and advocating for Asian American and women. I think that's saying a lot about your personal mission in life. And again, that's the thing, right? As we get older and older, we have clarity in our life, and I think it takes time to get to that clarity point. But again,
yes.
I mean,
that was one of the questions. See, that's part of the rehabilitation, was like, what I want to be remembered for. I don't know if I want to be remembered. I know that I know that I don't want to be remembered as a bad person, right? Or that I did something that was part of something bad. That much I know.
Right.
Maybe for me, a good life is not being remembered at all. I don't know, like, because I did well and like I was a contributor, but like, I don't want to put that much pressure on myself that like, I want to leave behind this legacy of XYZ, because I have so much pressure,
right.
But I do know that I don't want to be remembered as someone that did something bad or part of something bad. I think that's like the more important part for me, right? The other stuff, of course, who doesn't want to be remembered for something good, but I don't want to put that pressure on myself. That's like too much. I'm sure it'll happen, right? But I don't want to put the pressure.
Well, I can tell you for sure, we will remember this leadership fireside chat, and you being an inspiration to us all. So my time is now down to the last second.
Sorry.
Steve Wei, I'm going to turn it over to you. So again, for the folks on the call, feel free to pose your question. Steve Wei is going to now facilitate the Q&A portion.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Tang Siwei. Feel free to call me Siwei or Stephanie. I am a student chancellor and Project Shine volunteer at ESL class, and information and referral specialist at Women's Resource Center at CCSF. I'm also really interested in advocating for Asian women in leadership positions, especially in tech industry as well. So thank you, Dean Geisce Ly, for inviting our Charmaine Chan, and thank you, Charmaine Chan, for taking time, so much time of your busy schedule to share your stories and information and experiences with us. We have learned really so much from you. I basically myself learned the career paths, like your career paths to doctors, and experience volunteering in children hospitals, and the career transitions, and all the struggles I feel like I've been through, because I'm also in a career transition, and the journey, which is like I learned it from you. You said the journey is not always straight line, and we have to take various challenges to be where we are satisfied with, right? And along the way, like, I think it doesn't matter if we are successful, but what matters is along the way we help each other and support each other and move forward with that positivity. So I also like that you said, don't be someone else that you are not, be someone that is really you, right? And the ways you share with us to release your stress, exercise in the morning before the interview. Yeah, and also be proud of ourselves, every little steps that we made or little progress. I think we need to learn like how to cheer us, even just a little bit better than yesterday,
Yeah.
So I feel very bonded with you by hearing your journeys. I'm also in my career transition, as I said before, and feeling that possibility from your side today here is another actually encouragement and inspiration to me to keep myself moving forward. And thank you very much, Charmaine Chan.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I see there are so many questions, so I just want to put a reminder there. If you want to ask a question again, please send me a direct message. So let's get started with the first question in the chat. Charmaine, are you ready for the first question?
I am.
All right, so the first question is, as a woman, and how do you stay resilient in a workspace where men expect you to do tedious work such as taking notes?
Yeah, so I think I talked about that a little bit earlier, right? And I think it's hard because one part of us knows that's not right. and the other part is like, society has ingrained something into us as well, right? How we grew up, right? And so I think it's important to say, no, thank you. I know that's really hard though, right? And there actually is, and I need to find that paper. There is a paper about how women in general do not say no. And because innately the way that we were brought up at home and in society is that the reason why women volunteer for or get picked to do volunteer for the events, for like planning events, like at the office parties, or like taking the notes, or like doing the coffee runs, or doing things like that, is because innately we were taught as women to be nurturing and to be like not like
satisfy other people's needs.
Take care of people, nurturing, right? And I don't want to say like a housewife type thing, but that's sort of what it is, right? And when you think about those things, and mothering, right? And so it's really important to recognize that and be like, is this person asking me because I'm a woman, or because they're asking me because I know that person really well, or are they asking me because I throw a really good party? And two, do I actually really want to do it, right? And so example would be actually my first boss at Google. I was organizing a lot of stuff, and like the team dinner, and I'm like brand new, and I realized I'm good at it. I like it. And mostly for me, it was because I wanted to get to know the team better. But then I realized that I was setting the precedence that I should be doing all the work. And then I realized, like, how does that look as an Asian woman, right? And yeah, none of them are necessarily connected, but it could be, right? And I am now pushing that. So I actually said to him, I said, hey, I don't want to plan anymore. And he said, oh, is everything okay? And I explained exactly that to him. He said, I never thought about that, but now that you put in the perspective, I can see. And so he actually stopped asking all the women on the team to plan the events. He started reaching out to all the men and asked them to do that. So I think that's really important, is like to when that happens, sometimes, yes, you're going to be a team player and you're going to do it. But if it's happening repeatedly, then you can say things like, for note taking, for example, suggest, okay, I would like to suggest that for these team meetings that we have a different note taker every day, right? And every meeting, and and then have someone else go first beside yourself, and it's okay to offer up these suggestions and okay to say no. Right. And I think that's the most important thing, is like recognizing, okay, there's a pattern here and I'm going to break it by saying something and doing something. And if they ask you to take notes and you already said no, and then they expected notes after, you said, well, I'm sorry, I said I wasn't taking notes. I have some personal scribbles, but I'm not going to be sharing them with everybody because they're not legible, or understandable. It's very easy to say that. And it's true, right? So I think that's really important, is, that part. I'm not sure if I answered the resilience part as much, but I do think it's important to stand up and say something. And I know that's hard for some people, right? So if you don't feel comfortable doing that in a forum, it's okay to pull your boss aside and say, hey, I'm not comfortable being the only note taker, and this is why. I think it's really important to explain why, right? It's not that you can't do it. It's just that, are you being picked because you're the only woman?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Charmaine, for the answers. Actually inspired me in so many ways. So we have another question. Are you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
All right. The next question is, what tools or strategies do you use to take care of your mental health?
Really important, huh? I will tell you. So, it has been a journey for me, my mental health, especially after this accident. And especially also with COVID, being isolated from my family. I just moved to San Francisco and then COVID hit. I think I was only here for 2 months, right? And like I had no family up here. My friends were in LA and in New York and DC, and it was really lonely. And I actually went back to seeing a therapist, and I'm very big on therapy. And I know sometimes that's hard from a cultural perspective. I'm not talking just about the Asian culture. In general, therapy is not always easily accessible either, right? Like that's really important to understand too. Like I'm lucky that I've always had the ability to access the mental health care, right? But this is where I also think it's important if there's services at school where you could talk to, like, if you have guidance counselors or like or peer
mentors or something.
Not peer mentors, but peer, I forgot what, I'm sorry, this is when I run into words, but like there's peers who will listen to you and kind of like help you talk through problems without judgment, and you might not even know them, but you know, like a peer buddy. Group support, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's been really helpful for me, is that yes, peer counseling. Thank you, TJ. And so for me, that's been really, really helpful. And exercise is another way for me, because like I said, I that's where I get my anxiety out. That's where I get my energy out. And that's sort of, I have to start the day doing some sort of exercise or some sort of walk for my mental health. If not, I can tell. And for me, it's also figuring out like certain things that might set me off in not a positive way. So like I've stopped drinking coffee. I have now realized that coffee, I don't need it, and it makes me just jitter. And I actually answer if you think I'm talking fast now, when I'm on coffee, I talk very fast. My voice gets a little like, even though I'm not angry, it sounds angry. And I realize that makes people upset. So yeah, there's like, as long as you understand, like there's certain things that you need to do. Some people journal. That doesn't really help me as much because I feel like I'm writing and using my hands all day, that I don't really do that, but I know that helps some. I do meditate a lot. I meditate to sleep. It's the only way I can fall asleep. And I meditate first thing when I wake up, just 5 minutes. I have an app, you can do Calmer, or Tranquil, like there's so many different apps, and that's really what I do.
Thank you, Charmaine, for sharing so many ways to take care of our mental health. Even some of them doesn't work for you, maybe it works for us, right? Yeah. Thank you. So our next question is, coming from a cybersecurity perspective, is it hard for you to build trust with people when you have to always be on the lookout for bad actors?
That is a great question, and I loved whoever used the word bad actors. You know your stuff. Yeah, it is. And the thing is like, I'm actually a really trusting person. I hate to say it, and I'm admitting it to all of you. I can be a little gullible, especially with my friends. And so, if someone tells me something and I know them, I don't always, like, unless it's egregious, I don't, like, really wrong, I don't always fact check it. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I don't work in that space. They know, right? And so yes, it can be, but for newer people, it just depends what they're talking to me about, I guess, right? Like, so if it's someone out there, if they're asking a lot of questions about my job, that doesn't seem like it's because they're interested in my job. Like, the one thing about having worked in this field, you can sort of tell by people's body languages and like the type of questions they're asking and how they're asking, if are they really interested in the job, or they're trying to like fish for some information about something, right? Especially since I worked in the government, there was a lot of government contract, and you would go to events and all these contractors are trying to like get information about the next contract. They don't really care talking to you. They just know that you're going to run that contract, right? So there is that. It is hard to have that trust. But I think you can't let it run you. And that's where I think I found a balance of, I listen, and if I don't feel comfortable in the conversation, I'm trusting my instinct. And I just get up and I'm sorry, like, oh, thanks, or I see my friend over there, or I'm thirsty, or I have to use the bathroom, is the best excuse, right? And so I think that's like really important, is to trust your instinct. And I don't know if that really answered the question, because I think I always try to start out semi-trusting someone, and then I just listen to my instinct, and then if I feel comfortable with them, then yeah, I'm going to trust my instinct. If I don't, I'm going to get out of there. And I don't think that's just for cybersecurity. I think this is something that, as a woman, I really do, right? And I'm sure all the women here can agree. It's that situation of having to use your judgment, sometimes more because of the fact that we're women and we're targeted.
Yes, thank you, Charmaine, for answering that question. I think it's also important, and I forgot to write something similar, but I'm glad that someone asked it. So the next question is, do you sometimes feel you are different from people from Asia coming here as expats? Expats means elite people or international students and American-born Asians.
I think that there can be differences, right? Just like there's differences in America, like there's differences within Hong Kong, right? Because there's differences in socioeconomic, how you grew up. So there's always going to be differences. I think the experiences, though, are similar. So for example, like maybe people immigrating here now or foreign students now are probably for the first time getting that racism, right?
Yes.
That maybe I experienced or my ancestors experienced the first time around, right? Or like being made fun of because they have an accent or something like that, right? So I do think like there are those differences. And is there a cultural difference? Absolutely. I mean, so I'm Chinese American, and like I alluded to earlier that my family's from Hong Kong originally, and even when I go back, as soon as I speak Cantonese, everyone's like, "Oh, you're an ABC, American-born Chinese," right? And even when they look at my skin color, like, "Oh, you're too tan. You go out in the sun. You must be American," right? So it actually kind of goes both ways, like. So there is a little bit of difference in terms of kind of some of the cultural things, because I am Americanized. I'm very Westernized, right? I grew up here. So there are certain things that as American that I do that can be very American and not Chinese at all. And sometimes my aunts look at me and say, why are you doing that? You know, for example, I am very outspoken. Chinese culture, women aren't supposed to be as outspoken, right? But I shouldn't even say women, sorry, because that doesn't happen in my family. All the women in my family are outspoken. But you shouldn't talk to your elders. You shouldn't talk back to your elders. I was queen of talking back as a child. Like could not hold my tongue. Queen of it. And like, but none of my other family, none of my cousins or my brother or sister had any problem with that. And they actually grew up in Hong Kong longer versus me. I was taught, like, you know, you should stand up for what you believe in. You should be able to say what your thoughts are. And that's a very Western concept, right? So I think there is that difference, but I think in the end of the day, you know, it's not big differences, but it can be. I think it just depends on the situation and the person. I don't know, did I answer that question?
I think it very much answered the questions. I relate more with you because I'm a person who really talk back. Like when I was in bachelor's degree, I went to like a college which like my relatives think that they're really bad. They're like not respecting me at all. I'm like, one day I stand up like, why are you disrespecting me in that way? I'm getting my bachelor's degree and I'm getting my master's degree. And I don't care what you think about this school, but I love my school. I'm moving on with you like it or not liking it.
Good for you.
Starting from that day, they never talk anything about my school, my degrees, my other things.
That's good.
So I think like growing the culture in that way, I think some women, they don't realize that they should stand up and talk about what they really want instead of like letting others decide like, okay, your future is all like this, you are doomed in the rest of your life. So thank you for inspiring us, Charmaine.
Yeah.
And we're moving to the next question, which is, this one is, thank you very much for your speech. I am really impressed with the experience you shared with us. In your presentation, you mentioned negotiating and strategizing. I was wondering if you could share some of the suggestions on how to better negotiate and strategize.
Okay, yeah, I think I touched on this a little earlier, so I'll go into more depth of it. So when you think about negotiating, it's really thinking about what the other person really needs versus what they want, right? And being able to distinguish between those two things, right? Because what they want is not necessarily what they actually need. Does that make sense? So it's really important to understand that. And I think that's a little bit of a skill set, is you have to sort of be able to read between the lines when someone's talking. You have to look at their body language. You have to listen to the tone of their voice when they're talking. And sometimes it's about getting them one-on-one and getting them and building a relationship so that you can get this information. And this is not in a bad way. I'm not saying like this is manipulative or anything like that. That is not what you want to do, but you're trying to understand them better. And I think that's the heart of like being able to negotiate well, right? Is understanding that person. Now for strategizing, it's really important to understand what the situation at hand is. So I guess for both of them, it's really understanding. And that takes work, right? Just like it is negotiating, where you have to build relationships with people, understand what their wants and needs are. The next thing is really understanding what the problem is. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then thinking long-term. So when I talk strategy, I don't think about just like saying, oh, we're going to fix the problem and it's going to be immediate fix, right? I'm talking about what's the long-term solution. So like from a work perspective, right? It could be that, I have this problem and I need to make this product to solve it. And I also need to be making this amount of money in this amount of time, right? And so, and by amount of time, I'm saying like 2-3 years, right? We want to see a return on investment or something like that. And so it's really important, right, that you think about everything step by step, right? And that's the hard part. And the thing is you're not going to do it by yourself. Strategy work does not happen alone. You cannot do things in a silo, which means by yourself, right? It's really important that you bring in the people that are key to the success of this and do it just like a group project. There's a reason why it's a group project, right? You can't, if you leave out a person, I mean, we all know how group projects can go, as you know, but the point is that you want to bring in everybody's strength to come up with that strategy of how you're going to get that A for the project that you're working on, right?
Yes.
So I think that's, and you want to build on people's strengths, right? And I know that some people don't love group projects because sometimes you're like, oh, I feel like I could just do it better by myself. But some things, yes. But for the most part in life, that's not how the real world works. That's not how work works.
Exactly.
So and so it's really important that you not just be a team leader, but you know when to be the leader. But you don't have to be the leader every time. That's also really important in your strategy, in general. So I think everyone thinks that I might be a leader every time because I can be a little bit dominant in conversation, or I'm very sure of myself, but I actually am not. I actually know when to take a step back and say, I'm going to let that person lead, because not only are they the right person, but they deserve to do it and they're the better person for it. Or that person really wants to lead and I don't need to cause more problems for the team by being a lead, like by trying to lead as well. So take that step back. That's also a strategy, right? So there's a lot of elements into it, but you really have to pay attention to the space that you're in and listen to what the situation is and pull in the people that you need to pull in to be successful, right?
Yes. Thank you. You don't have to be leaders all the time. That also inspired me a lot. And thank you again for answering all these questions. And I noticed there are so many more questions coming. And unfortunately, due to the time limit, we cannot get to all of them. So I will thank you again. And now I will turn the floor over to our teammate, Jose. The floor is yours. Thank you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Siwe, for facilitating the Q&A portion of our event. Everybody, my name is Jose Kerkeve, and I am also an ESL student at City College of San Francisco. I want to thank you again, Charmaine, for answering some more questions from the audience. We really appreciate you sharing helpful tips, lesson learned, and sage advice. I personally loved hear about your experience, especially your life experience. I like it so much. And for those of you coming from class or joining late, now I am going to facilitate the last portion of our team together. which is to invite you to share what inspired you today or what you have learned from Charmaine. If you would like to share, please raise your virtual hands in Zoom and I will call on you. If somebody wants to share, please. Yes, okay, I see Taiko.
Oh, this is a comment, right? Thank you, Charmaine, for coming here to spend time with us and then share your experience. And I really liked that, you know, I'm an Asian, I'm not Asian American, but my daughter is an Asian American. Yes, and she talks me back all the time. But yes, so I wanted to, you know, actually the third question was asked by me, and thank you so very much for answering. And I was really inspired by your, you know, whole presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. The talking back will stop at some point, sort of.
Yeah, because I don't understand my own daughter because she's so American.
Yeah, it is hard. It is a cultural change, but I think you're
Yes.
taking the right steps. You being in this forum right now means that you're willing to put up, and you also have to, I don't know how old your daughter is, but you know, also if they're young, if you're younger in general, you know, it's hard to listen to adults, you know, and so at some point you're putting in the work, and I think that's the most important thing that you're doing for your daughter and for yourself. So thank you for that. That's
Thank
really
you for
important.
encouraging me. It's very sweet.
Thank you, Taiko, so much for sharing. I see Deborah. Deborah, want you to share something with us?
Yeah, you know, I would love to stay here like for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, like listen to you, because, you know, I didn't saw the time. The time was so fast because you shared so many things with us today. I really appreciate like, especially you teaching us how to be flexible, because nowadays we are taught to be strong or to have a goal, to have, you know, what you're gonna do next. What is next? What is the next step? What is the next step? And I really appreciate, because now, okay, it's okay. Now I have some ideas. Maybe tomorrow I have another, because we change all the time, right? Our lives change all the time. And I was really touched by what you share with us about the accident you had and all the struggling you have, but you are still like working and learning again, and actually you are inspiring us to continue working, continue improve ourselves, and to be better like every day. And if we need to go back to the beginning, that's okay. And I think this is the lesson that I'm gonna take from this time. If I need to go back, it's okay. If I need to be like, you know, learning everything again, I will do that. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah. I can see another hands. Mana Lily,
Yes,
do you want to share? No, you.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you. My name is Malina Villalobos, and I am a student organizer and student activist, serving as student trustee for City College San Francisco. And I first of all, I wanted to Charmaine, I wanted to thank you for coming and sharing a little bit about your narrative and your story, and I want to commend you on your perseverance,
Thank
despite
you.
all the circumstances.
Thank
And thank you for just I guess emphasizing the part about team and group work, and I feel that it's a community work and not just silos, not just not just individuals. It's how we're going to keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate the comment you made earlier as well on chat.
Thank you, Malinili. One more hand. I see Heather. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Charmaine.
I have
I hope you're doing well. I
you.
really appreciated the whole discussion. It definitely went in a lot of different directions and covered a lot of different areas, which I think is great, and we don't always get. I wanted to say that I really appreciated when you were talking about strength, and I think there's strength in being vulnerable too. And so I appreciate the parts of your experience that you shared today that might not have been so easy to share and even to go through. But, you know, I think sometimes all we see about a person or hear about a person is their bio, you know, and we don't get to know the other sides of that individual. And literally your accomplishments, but also what you've gone through have formed the person that you are. So just thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you helping me out with the words. That was really helpful, actually. So thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Heather. I see 3 more hands rise up. The next one is Sigue. You are on mute.
Thank you. I had a hard time unmute myself. So first of all, I said so many thank you. I want to say again, because I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to you, Charmaine Chan, for coming here and actually empowering all of students here to keep moving forward. We feel that power and positivity from you, and you are actually remembered today as a role model, at least for myself, and I believe for so many other students as well. I'm also learning how to take care of my mental health and be proud of myself, and also satisfied with my own achievements. So thank you for affirming that that's the right track. So I would like to just extend it and to make sure you're getting it officially from myself. Thank you again.
Thanks, Yue. I really appreciate it. And thank you for leading that earlier part as well, the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigue. The next one is Ni.
Yes,
Ni.
thank you. I wish we could have more time because I have so many thank you for you, and especially as an Asian, and I'm really impressed with your presentation today, and I learned so much, especially when you mentioned about standing up, speak up for yourself. I was always told not to speak up, and I feel guilty about that, but it's actually not what I think, because of today's presentation and many other takeaway I can take. So you're really empowering us and change our mindset. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming, and you really make a big impact on after today. I leave today's presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. And just remember, standing up for yourself takes time. Don't beat yourself up. If you end up being like, I should have stood up for myself, don't beat yourself up. Treat it like a lesson learned, and say, okay, you know what? This happens next time, I'm going to do it. Because it's also really important for all of us to understand we come from different cultures and personalities. It's easy for me to say, stand up for yourself, because that's just who I am, right? But it's not easy for everybody else. So make sure you give yourself more grace. You give yourself grace, and you say, if you don't do it, you say, it's okay. I'm going to do it next time. I know how to do it next time, you know?
Yes, thank you so much, Charmaine.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ni. We have time for just one more comment. I see the hands of Irma.
Me, my turn? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Charmaine. I'm really learning about your experience, especially because as a leader, I'm the faculty instructor, the Family Resource Center, and I'm working with a lot of immigrants that had already lived everything of the countries. They are recently immigrant, and I have that kind of mindset, like, oh, we need to start all over again. And you give me the inspiration. It's also give me the support and the words that I can continue help them how they can overcome the challenge, because you are a very humble person.
Thank
You're
you.
talking about your success and also very about your personal experience and the challenge that you have, especially as a leader. And for today, I learned like not all the time you have to be the leader. That's what I really love it, because my personality immediately said, how can I help you? And sometimes I forgot about myself. And because I try to give, and you give me the lesson that also take care of myself in order to take care of others. Thank you so much for sharing this humble human experience with us as a leader.
And thanks for being on the faculty and doing what you do. I'm sure you also inspire your students that you work with. And that's like really important. And that's part of your giving, right? Your nurturing side. So I'm glad you're going to take some time for yourself too.
Beautiful, thanks.
Thank you, Rima. Last, I would like to ask Charmaine if you have any final leadership advice that you would like to share.
You know, I think I've said a lot today, and sometimes I'm wondering, like, what did I say? But I think it's really important that you be yourselves. I can't even express that more, and be proud of who you are. Every one of you guys should be proud of yourself because you're here today, right? I mean, not at this seminar, but like taking that step and saying, you know what, I'm going to do ESL. I'm going to learn the language. I'm going to come here and I'm going to do what I need to do. And I think that's really important. But it's also like this community that you guys have built is also really important, because you know how I said earlier, like, you know, teamwork, all those kind of things, right? And not always being the leader. I think what's really important is that you all leaning on each other, being a community, whether you're Asian, not Asian, Mexican, it's all very important that you guys have this shared experience right now, which is classes, which is ESL. It's very important that you guys take that and build a community with each other and lean on each other, because being on top can be very lonely if you don't have the people, good supportive people surrounding you, and take the help from others. That's really important too. I didn't get here by myself. I had family, I had friends, I had people that believed in me, you know, and the thing is, you can't do something by yourself just by believing yourself. You have to take that spirit of other people who are believing in you and believe that, right? So I think like that's a lot of different, I guess, last words, but I think believe in yourself, definitely use this community, you know, build a community with what you all have now and help each other. I think that's going to be really important. And I was going to say too, you know I didn't answer all the questions. If there's a list of questions that you want to give Jessie, I'm happy to write those answers down, or I'm happy to do like an informal Zoom call, whatever, you know, Jessie wants to do. I'm happy to continue the conversation. I'm also happy to share some of my contact info with Jessie. So if any of you guys want to email me or message me on LinkedIn or something for future things or just further discussion, I'm more than happy to do that. I've done that in the past with some other things, with some other groups that I've spoken with. Like I said, I'm a very open book. I don't always reply the most timely because of, you know, but I will reply. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, Jessie can let me know, and I'm always happy to do that. But I'm definitely happy to at least answer those questions and to give at least a contact, so that if you guys have additional things that you want to talk about, I'm happy to do that.
Wow, thanks, Charmaine. We are at the end of our time together. Thank you, everybody who joined today's Leadership Fires chat. It was truly an insightful learning opportunity. And again, a very special thank you to Charmaine for joining us today. We are truly inspired by you and your stories.
Thank you.
Last things, the next and the last Leadership Fireside chat this semester is scheduled on May 6th. from 4 to 5:30 p.m. And the speaker is the Dr. Cheryl Davis, who is executive director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commissions. And we hope to see you next month. And thank you, Charmaine, and thank you, everybody. And Jesse, the floor is yours.
No, thank you. I just want to acknowledge the 4 student facilitators. So Candace, Deborah, Siwei, and Jose, you all did a great job.
Thank you.
You know, again, thank you for all the folks who are still on this call. There's still 27 of us. Again, Charmaine is an inspiration to me, to all of us, to the people she's touched. Again, thank you, Charmaine. You know, I think, you know, the one summary is that you are kind, you are bold, and you're courageous. And I think those are very, you know, very important things to do in life, to be kind, to be bold, to be courageous. So thank you for demonstrating your kindness, demonstrating your boldness, and demonstrating your courage. It really is palpable. And again, you will do great things in life. And again, we are rooting for you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So I know we can spend another 5 hours, but again,
Can we? I know you have to go.
Well, like I said, Jesse, if you guys have the questions written down or like save the questions, I'm happy to answer them via Word, which will probably be a lot shorter than me just speaking. And then of course, you know, Jesse, you and I can talk about contacts and things like that. So whatever you guys need, I'm happy to help.
thank you, Charmaine. Again, thank you all for joining this call. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great
Everybody
weekend.
have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Stay
Have a
safe.
great weekend too.
Thank you.